All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Strategy Factory. I am Lucas Goransky, and today I will be talking with Jacky Barker, social lead at Canva. Jacky, good afternoon. How are you? And thank you for your time.
So good to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's a big pleasure. Jacky, before we start, can you tell us in just a few sentences, who is Jacky Barker?
Okay, that's a good question. So I'm actually originally a Brit. So I moved to Australia around 4 years ago. So I'm very lucky at the moment to, be working at Canva. And I started there 3 years ago. So I'm actually quite old news in the Canva world. It's growing so quickly. But I guess I joined Canva originally to set up social media and community for the business. I was the first ever social media manager there. And it's kind of crazy to look at how big we are now. And I'm specializing in looking after the social media strategy for B2B and employer brand. So that's where I'm really focusing now. So what I'm looking to do is really help empower organizations of all sizes to use Canva, and then really help position Canva as the best place to work in the world, which is quite an easy job when I believe it is. So I feel very lucky and very privileged to be in this role at Canva. It's really, really great.
Definitely a marvelous job, but definitely not an easy thing. So do you remember how many people were working at Canva when you first started, and how many are there now?
So there was less than 250 people. And now there's around 1,500.
That is crazy.
So yeah, you could say that things are very different to when I joined. And I think that's actually one of the amazing things about, joining a startup at that stage, is how quickly it scales, and, having to adapt as well to the change in the organization as it scales to that size as well.
That's beautiful. I think that's a perfect segue into probably one of the first things that I want to know, and that's about culture. I mean, culture in Canva, but also your perspective of culture. You said when you started, there was 250 of you. Now there's 1,500. That's a huge change. What was the big impact, if any, on the culture around Canva? And then what do you think defines culture in a business?
And I mean, I love this question. I think, when I first joined Canva, I was really amazed at the culture, but the culture is based on the values, right, that we have at the company. And we have 6 core values that basically guide every single thing that we do, right? And they have been at the foundation of this business since it started. And it's something that we literally live by. So everything that happens internally, everything that happens externally is guided by these values that we have. And I think that's what makes every decision we make really well thought out, and make sure that we're doing the right thing. So we have: be a good human, be a force for good, pursue excellence, empower others, make complex things simple, and set crazy big goals and achieve them. And that really honestly just guides every single thing that we do. And I think there's, people probably think of Canva as well and think of all the amazing perks that Canva has, and might associate the culture with the perks, right? And I think, it's really great to have all of these amazing things like free breakfast, free lunch. Like, I absolutely love it. All the snacks in the office, we're allowed to bring dogs in, but that isn't, to me, what makes a good culture, right? It's what interaction you have with someone every single day. That is what builds the culture, right? It's, what's that exchange look like with someone? Are you creating a safe and trusted environment for them to feel like they belong? And I think we have to think of us all as unique individuals, right? In a workplace, we all have, our own individual quirks. We're not into the same things. And creating a space for people where they can really feel true to themselves is so important. And that's really what makes culture. And I think that can span in so many different ways. So, having a meeting with someone, are you thinking about ways that the people that don't like speaking up can contribute to that meeting? How are you, trying to include everyone? And it can also lead through to the celebrations. And celebrations are a big part of Canva's culture. And, we don't just celebrate the crazy big goals that we achieve. It's the little milestones as well that get you to that point that you should be celebrating along the way to keep the team motivated. But I've worked in companies, and, celebrations are often associated with alcohol, right? And, it's about having a party, having a good time. But that's not inclusive, right? Not everyone drinks. So we really try and think about how can we create inclusive celebrations so everyone can take part and everyone can feel connected. So for me, that is really like the foundation of a culture, right? It's, it's creating that space where you can be yourself, you can give feedback to each other, not feel criticized, but feel empowered to be achieving the goals in the best way possible and doing it as yourself, not pretending to be anyone else, ultimately.
That's a fabulous distinction, because I do think that a lot of people, when they think about culture, they think about perks. And that's true. It doesn't have to be that way, or it's not actually what it is. It's what you said. It's about values. It's about representing those values, and then it's about making sure that everyone's comfortable on being themselves. A few weeks back, I was interviewing the director of editorial at Giphy, and he was saying that one of their values is something like, for you to be whoever you are, as weird as that must be, or something like that. And I loved it. And I think you guys, without having those same words, it's kind of the same thing. Is if you're an introvert, if you're an extrovert, it doesn't matter. It's, we'll try to make and find a way for you to be as comfortable as you can to be yourself, and then contribute from that space. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And that really is at the core of what we do. And, to that point, a free breakfast is never going to replace that, right? No. It's never going to replace that feeling. If you're, not making people feel included and you've got all of these perks, that's not a good culture. That doesn't create a good culture. Nothing like that is ever going to, overtake the well-being and, the mental health of your employees there every single day.
That's wonderful. And I wanted to ask you about nurturing that culture, and how do you make that? I'm gonna go again with the introvert perspective, or that quality of someone on a meeting, and maybe that person is not very comfortable at speaking up. How do you empower them? How do you nurture them to then still feel valued and still feel like they have a place where they can actually contribute to the final saying?
Yeah, I think it's finding alternative ways, right? And we have virtual collaboration tools in Canva as an example. So it's like a brainstorming template. So we can do big brainstorms and everyone can type in their notes, right? And then they just put a little icon of who they are. And then we can talk through. So I could directly then ask someone without them having to like proactively be trying to speak up. I'm like, do you want to share your idea with us? And then it gives them the opportunity to talk, right? So that is like one way that we definitely do that within meetings. And I think it's, I think as a leader as well, you have to proactively set the guidance, right? You have to create that space for them to feel comfortable. So I think it's, even just saying, even if you don't feel comfortable to speak up in this meeting, feel free to message me after. I'm there if you want to have a chat. I think it's just having that conversation and setting that direction that can make someone who maybe didn't feel comfortable start to feel comfortable. And I think there's I have these kind of different things that I do to make teams feel included that, are really, really important. And that is one of them. And it's, it's the collaboration, being able to connect with people of all different types, and it's understanding their behaviors, the way they are, and finding ways that you can make them feel comfortable on their unique individual level.
Really. That's awesome. That's great. That's wonderful. So now what you're doing is you're working on employer brand. That's what you're doing right now, right? So I think the next question that I have is around that. How do you build a global brand, and what are the foundations or the strategies to make what started as a micro hub, I think in Western Australia, if I'm not wrong, with Melanie a few years back, into something that now has taken the world by storm, and it's almost a must-have tool for every business, no matter if they're small or they're big. How do you make that happen? How do you build that brand?
Yeah, so I think that's, one of the things you have mentioned, it is a challenge as we scale, to think about the culture and how that culture scales with a business of that size. And obviously I'm looking after the externalizing of that culture, right? I'm looking after social media and employer brand. But I think, I've mentioned it before, the thing that we are really lucky about is those values transfer to every single market, right? It doesn't matter if we're in the American office or the Philippines office. Those values are the foundation and the core of everything we do. So it scales. It doesn't matter where the office is, that culture is going to go with it. And we actually have, a really good hiring process, so everyone that comes in, is going to be screened for these values. It's a huge part of the process that we do. So everyone that joins Canva is part of our values already, right? And we make sure that the people getting into the business are the, you know, the right people to really thrive in our culture. And I think that's a really important thing as we're scaling, that we keep in mind with, you know, our hiring process as we scale. And what I've done really is been able to look at those different kind of values and start to connect it into what are our social content pillars, right? So with that employer brand, what do we want to start externalizing to the world that we think is going to help position us as the best place to work, right? So we have three kind of core different areas. So we have connect, learn, and inspire. Right. So I've took those kind of brand values that we have and then started to think about what are the ways that we can translate that to the rest of the world. So for Connect, for example, it's about showcasing Canva's positive impact on the world. So, you know, we're really wanting to really focus there on the things that I've spoke about, you know, about inclusion, our Force for Good projects that we do, you know, to help to support those in need. And then you've got Learn, which is really trying to put, you know, us in the spotlight. We've got so many amazing learnings, right, from scaling a business of this size. So we want to help educate other businesses on how to do that, right? And, you know, to understand about the culture, our feedback culture, how we connect with each other. And we're also, you know, very lucky to have something called Canva University, which is where we have are people, you know, external and internal, running workshops. For example, I run one on how to bounce back from setbacks. And, you know, all of that content can be translated into value for other people outside of Canva. And then the last one is inspire, which is obviously really important. And I like to think that the Canva culture does inspire other people, you know, and I said I have the easiest job because it is such an inspiring place to work. And we're very lucky to have a whole Vibe team. So we have a whole team dedicated to Vibe and really working on not just the perks, which I spoke about, but health and well-being. Like we have tons of initiatives that are really trying to support this new world that we live in, right? This new hybrid world, which has came with so many challenges. How are we making sure that we support the health and well-being of every single person that works here? And, you know, some things we have access to, like an external, you know, therapy program that people can sign up to get support. And we have an internal coaching program as well, which, you know, allows people to be the best version of themselves. So it's about really taking all of that, scaling it across the different markets. And then my job really is externalizing that and creating something for global teams that they can easily take and localize, really.
That was the key thing, because I was reading about Heineken the other day, and one of the things that they said that was very valuable for them to grow into different geographies was having that local connection, right? Because as you said, the values that you're talking about, most of them are intrinsic to humans, right? There's this idea of feeling valued and being connected, and having aggressive goals and then smashing them. I mean, those things can be widely kind of accepted and common to every nationality, geography, ethnicity, and so on. But nevertheless, every single culture and every single country has their own values and has their own things. So how do you then translate everything that you're building into those local communities for them to apply them and then reach those local connections in the best possible way?
I think that's around setting the standard, right? So from a social media perspective, we create guidelines, right? So these are our pillars, right? This is the look and feel of the Canva brand. And Canva is an amazing tool for this because you can set up, you know, Canva for Enterprise, you can set up one global brand within that product, right? So it's got access to all the fonts, the kits, and then we've got templates for social media ultimately. And then the local teams, you can lock certain things. So we can lock the position of the text, lock where the image sits, but you give the power over to the local teams to take your strategy, take your insight and tailor it, right? So there will be certain, you know, local events that they want to tap into that aren't relevant to Australia. But what they've got is all of the foundations there, understanding of the strategy, the brand look and feel, the tone and voice of us as a brand, and they can ultimately take that and localize it into things that are then relevant to that particular market. And it is so important, as you said, that's the way that you really connect and resonate with that market, is a thorough understanding of the people that are there. So it's not about having, you know, total control as a global brand either. I think it's really about empowering the local teams to take ownership, and they are the experts in their market at the end of the day. So you have to hand over that power to them.
So again, to recap then, and let me know if I'm wrong or if I'm missing something out. So you said to build a global brand is important to obviously what you guys is, you guys have a wonderful hiring process. You have very strong values and a very strong culture. And then this last thing that you were talking about, which is empowering those local teams to make that final mile of the decision, right? We take the things global, but that final step to make it feel like it's very local comes from those local teams. Is there anything I'm missing on those three things?
No, I think I think that's the core things. I think, as a global business as well, you are wanting that layer of protection of the brand, which I think, you have to make sure that there is something in place. And I think that's where Canva as a tool is actually really helpful. So like the tools that you have for that communication, like you can tag people so they can tag us, like, is this looking okay? So having that communication as well with those local teams to make sure that they can ask the right questions from a global brand perspective as well is important.
That's beautiful. So you talked about social media, and obviously you now are working on employer brand, but you come from a lot of building social media. And if I don't remember wrong, the first time that we talked, you said that you were the sole person to manage social media when you started at Canva. What's the strategy, or I don't want to talk about Canva strategy, like certainly, but what was your strategy? What are the key strategies to manage the different channels in social media, right? Because you have things like Instagram or like Facebook or like LinkedIn or Twitter, and they have different audiences and people expect different things. But then how do you make that clear structure? How do you make that clear strategy to target different messages in each one of them? And what do you want to get out of them?
Yeah, definitely. And I think one thing to caveat as well, my position on this is that it's better to do a few very well than just have a presence across multiple channels just for the sake of being there. And I use a model called SoftStack. I don't know if have you heard of SoftStack before? No. Okay, so I'll go through. It's like S is situation analysis. So it's really looking at, if you do have the channels, what's working so far, what's the state of the market, the landscape, what's trending, and doing kind of like a SWOT analysis, right, as well. So really understanding, like, even internally, do we have the right team, then externally, what are the competitors doing as well, are we have any threats upcoming in this area? And then we have O, which is objectives, because then you're really looking at the business objectives, and then you're really wanting to tie social back to those business objectives, right? How can social play the best role in achieving those business goals? And then it's the strategy, which is the S. So this is like, how are we actually going to understand our audience? Like, where are they? What's their behavior on social media? What is their purpose? What are they really wanting from all of these different social channels that we have? So really doing a lot of research and then defining those personas, right? So looking at outside, not just their social behavior, but where do they consume news? Where are they eating dinner? You like really try and get a big picture then of the audiences. And then it's T, which is then tactics. So it's like, what are the tactics to get there, which is then really defining those content pillars. So we align our content pillars back to our brand pillars, and then really make sure that they're really clear and defined. And we understand under those content pillars what different content series that we do. And then you've got your action, which is like what tools, processes, systems you need, and then control, which is how you're going to measure it. So really at that, strategy and tactics stage, you're looking at the behavior of your audience and being like, where are they? Right? Where are they right now for our current target audiences? So where should we invest first? It doesn't mean that you're never going to move into those other channels, but imagine starting as one person as well, a business. It's like, where should I exert my energy right now to move the needle forward as much as we can as possible at this moment in time? And I'm a big fan of strategy, but I'm also a big fan of experimentation. And I think your strategy should never be rigid. So, you may define something and at that moment in time, it's working for you. But without experimentation, you're never moving forward, right? You've got to love to test and fail as much as you have to hit the goals, because I just think the reality of social media is you're not always going to hit the goals, and you've got to learn to thrive with it, right? It's like something new has happened. Let's give it a shot. Let's see what happens. And I love that. And I think, it's such an important part of your strategy ultimately, is like, how are you going to test, learn, and experiment to continually evolve your strategy as quick as social media moves?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. No, it's a very hard job. And one of the things that, as you were talking, that I was thinking of is today in social media, there's two big goals, right? For every company, the ultimate goal is conversion, right? Is sales. That's why they have social media, obviously, to maybe to build employer brand. There might be other objectives, but there's usually there's this idea of final conversion. But social media is also a thing to build brand awareness. And the metrics to build brand awareness are not as easy to set and not as easy to measure as the metrics of conversion, because conversion, it's easy. It's a pipeline. It's a funnel. They come here, they interact with the brand 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Eventually they buy or they don't, but that's it. For awareness is different. So I just wanted to know, what were your thoughts around these things? How did you manage this? Or if you have any ideas, recommendations of people of how do you social to not just convert, or not with the idea or sake to convert, but also leveraging brand awareness that could bring results in a longer period of time?
I think that's like an internal education piece as well, isn't it? Being in social media, because if someone's not in social media, they might not understand that, right? And I think that's one big challenge that we have. It is about that long-term advocacy, and it's over time being able to strengthen those relationships so they feel so connected to you that they're not going to go somewhere else. And it is long-term, and the game is to really sell that in. But it also depends, I guess, as well, on your strategy. And do you have an organic only strategy, which is, by the way, we are organic only at the moment, so we aren't even working with paid. Obviously, if you've got a paid strategy as well, you can really start to think about how you take those users down the funnel to then convert at some point. But I have to really position our role on social media as awareness and engagement, and then find strategic ways to then prove the long-term value. And one of the ways that we actually did that was by starting communities. So, it was actually looking at our audience. You start to see trends and behaviors and start like smaller segments of people. So we had like just some people who were like super Canva fans, like they just didn't stop talking about us, right? And it was like, how do we nurture this amazing group of people who ultimately are just wanting to connect with us more and more? And they're spreading word of mouth then, because they're so passionate about Canva. They're spreading word of mouth through social media because they're sharing our content. They're saying, I love Canva. So we created a space, a Facebook group for them to connect with each other. And then it builds those relationships. They're helping each other learn, they're educating, they get access to the Canva team. And you can't put a price on that, because that connection, that real connection with each other and with the brand is what is going to make them stay with you for life, right? Because you are not anymore just a company. You are facilitating a space for them to get their core need, which is connection and belonging. When you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right, that is the foundation, right, of what people need to thrive. And it's really amazing just to see the value they get from connecting with each other. So that's my thing. Like, it is a long-term game, is what I'm trying to say, but there is ways like through organic to strengthen those relationships, which then long-term will lead to that conversion. So it's always at the forefront of my mind, like, when I'm thinking about social media, but our short-term goals are awareness and reach and social engagement, really.
That's great. No, that's awesome. And I love this word about this concept of communities, right? Do you think every business has the chance to build a community of advocates? Do you think, I think when I think of Canva, obviously, I think that's something that you guys created, but I think of a B2C product, although it's B2B, we use it as a company and it's outstanding. We love it. But it's this idea that people can become advocates because it's what they use to actually build their own social media if they're independent creators, or even if they're just regular people that want to use social media and they use Canva to build whatever they're doing, and it's wonderful, it's great. Do you think that every company, no matter what sort of product they have, they can build this community of champions? And what would be the best way to nurture them? I mean, obviously the Facebook group is a great idea. Do you have any other types of incentives or ways to make them engage better or make them feel very comfortable?
I guess from that, it doesn't always have to be super fans, right? Maybe you do have a product. I'm thinking maybe it's a DIY product. I don't know. But if you understand your audience, it's like, what role does that, I don't know, let's say, I'm trying to think of something, that paint, maybe it's paint, play in the wider vision of what they're trying to achieve. And then you could look at and be like, well, it's actually home renovation. So they're painting, but actually in the bigger picture, what they're wanting to do is like renovate their home. So you could start to build a community around tips and tricks on how to renovate your home. Your product's at the core and center. You facilitated this space, so they build that connection with you, but you're actually helping them achieve a bigger goal. And I think that's the understanding, right? And it's even with Canva, as a design tool, what is the bigger purpose that they're actually trying to achieve, and then connecting people around that. So we have, a community for teachers as well. So people who use Canva in school. So, it's really about thinking a bit wider. It's not just your product. What is the purpose of your product in a bigger world that can actually rally more people around it? And then long term, obviously, they will probably go to you, right, when they're going to make that purchase decision.
Absolutely. No, that's great. Is there any other community that you guys have? I mean, teachers, let's call it advocates or fans, any other sort of community that you guys are nurturing and you separate from each other?
Yeah, so we have Canva Design Circle, which is just for our super fans, realistically. Then we have our Canva Certified Creatives, which is our ambassador program. So they are people who actually make a living educating other people on how to use Canva. So we started to see a lot of people doing that online as well, which is amazing. We also have Canva Champions as well. So it's like a tier up of kind of our super fans who are realistically just really passionate about Canva and are spreading the word about our Canva Pro product. And then we have our, I call them Canva for Good communities, which is our teachers, and then also nonprofits. So we really wanted to find a way to, connect people who are using Canva in a way to make the world a better place, so like inspiring children, and people who, are using it for their nonprofits as well, to connect them together. And then the newest one that we have is our Canva Creators program, which is for template designers. So people who are designers who will help kind of expand our content library. So we have content for everyone, really.
Beautiful. Oh, that's amazing. Jacky, as we are kind of going into the last bit of our conversation, first of all, I want to say thank you, but then I wanted to kind of close with what you're doing and the future of your job right now, which is employer brand, and where are you guys going, and how do you envision employers in the future? What do you think is going to change or has been changing from COVID that is going to affect the way that employers need to look at their employees and at their ecosystem to build and nurture what's coming? Because I mean, technically, there has been a huge disruption with COVID. I'm personally I'm not sure where it's actually going. I think that everyone's talking about the great resignation and how people have found the time to say, this is not what I want to do. I want to do something different. I want to really be in touch with who I am and what I really feel. So obviously, Canva has an advantage being a young company, very proactive, very quirky, very startup-y, with a lot of perks, but with also very strong values. But where do you see the future of employer brand, and what are the strategies that you're building and the ones that you can then maybe recommend to other companies that are restructuring or rethinking of their employer brand?
Yeah, and I think that is a really good question, because I have just seen a huge shift in people who now are, really wanting work-life balance. And I think COVID just made people realize what to value in life, right? And I think everyone's had this period of really reflecting, and people aren't, it's been so blurred being at home, like really trying to separate those two things. They're advocating for it now. There's all this talk around the 4-day work week as well that's been bubbling. And it's really about putting the well-being of your people at the heart of what you're doing. That is how you're going to get people to stay. Because like you said, there is this whole thing now. It's like, I'm not standing for this anymore. And it's that feeling of like empowerment that people have had to really start to think about what they want from life. So, you have to really put the well-being of your people at the core of what you do. And I think I'm very lucky with where I work, and that just being something that we do. But I think, you hear about other businesses and you maybe would question, are you really putting the well-being of people? And it's like also, that level of trust as well. So, people are wanting to maybe have a split now of working from home and being in the office when things are back to normal, and, providing your employees with the trust to allow that to happen. So I think there will be just a huge shift with, I think, employees advocating for their rights, and then the businesses needing to really support that as well to get people to stay engaged and want to stick around. That's kind of what I see as happening. And I think that's, really what we are focusing on, with employer brand as well, is that flexibility that we have. And my job is really to showcase what we're doing to make this new world as enjoyable as possible, ultimately. And work doesn't have to be something that you dread going to. It can be really amazing and engaging, and a place for you to thrive and achieve amazing goals. And I think if all businesses focus on that, like how can we support our people to achieve all the things that they want to achieve, then all of us would be a lot happier.
Absolutely. So many rich concepts, so many great ideas, Jacky. Thank you so much. The last question is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't, or that you would have liked to share that we didn't get to?
No, I don't think so. I think that was a good conversation, hopefully.
Fabulous conversation. A lot to take, a lot for our community. So thank you very much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the very short day of this Friday. And I hope that everyone enjoys this conversation as much as I did. Thank you so much.
Yes, thanks.
Have a great day.
And you. I guess one thing to mention is if you're interested in Canva's employer brand, we have an Instagram called Canva Live, and you can also follow us on LinkedIn for updates.